What's the Somali word for air? Hawo. What's the Somali word for earth? Rul. What's the Somali word for grass? Aus. What's the Somali word for mountain? Bur. What's the Somali word for river? Wabi. What's the Somali word for sea? But. What's the Somali word for ocean? Badwing. What's the Somali word for island? Jasirat. What's the Somali word for bridge? Bundo. What's the Somali word for path? Jit. What's the Somali word for world? Dunida. What's the Somali word for war? Dagal. What's the Somali word for soldier? Askiri. What's the Somali word for police? Police. What's the Somali word for law? Shar'i. What's the Somali word for court? Mahkamat. What's the Somali word for judge? Garsore. What's the Somali word for nurse? Kalkaliso. What's the Somali word for medicine? Dawo. What's the Somali word for patient? Bukan. What's the Somali word for health? Afimat. What's the Somali word for sick? Hanun. What's the Somali word for cure? Boksin. What's the Somali word for pain? Hanoon. What's the Somali word for blood? Deek. What's the Somali word for bone? Lef. What's the Somali word for skin? Harak. What's the Somali word for heart? Wadnaha. What's the Somali word for brain? Maskah. What's the Somali word for mouth? Af. What's the Somali word for finger? For. What's the Somali word for toe? Sul. What's the Somali word for knee? Jilib. What's the Somali word for foot? Rak. What's the Somali word for arm? Ga'an. What's the Somali word for shoulder? Get up. What's the Somali word for face? Waji. What's the Somali word for smile? Lola Adain. What's the Somali word for cry? Oyin. What's the Somali word for laugh? Qosol. What's the Somali word for eat? Ronit. What's the Somali word for drink? Abit. What's the Somali word for sleep? Hurdo. What's the Somali word for awake? Sojid. What's the Somali word for dream? Rio. What's the Somali word for think? Fikir. What's the Somali word for understand? Faham. What's the Somali word for remember? Hasuso. What's the Somali word for forget? Hilmam. What's the Somali word for hope? Rajo. What's the Somali word for fear? Apsi. What's the Somali word for courage? Gesi. What's the Somali word for coward? Fulay. What's the Somali word for trust? Kalsoni. What's the Somali word for betray? Fiyano. What's the Somali word for win? Gul. What's the Somali word for lose? Guldaro. What's the Somali word for success? Gul. What's the Somali word for failure? Fashil. What's the Somali word for profit? Faido. What's the Somali word for loss? Kasare. What's the Somali word for rich? Tajir. What's the Somali word for poor? Faqir. What's the Somali word for buy? Ibsisho. What's the Somali word for sell? Ibin. What's the Somali word for store? Dukan. What's the Somali word for customer? Ma'amil. What's the Somali word for price? Pime. What's the Somali word for cheap? Fraqis. What's the Somali word for expensive? Kali. What's the Somali word for gift? Hadiyat. What's the Somali word for borrow? Amahin. What's the Somali word for return? Sur elin. What's the Somali word for winter? Jilal. What's the Somali word for summer? Haga. What's the Somali word for autumn? Dave. What's the Somali word for spring? Gur. What's the Somali word for snow? Baraf. What's the Somali word for storm? Dufan. What's the Somali word for lightning? Hilab. What's the Somali word for cloud? Darur. What's the Somali word for fog? Eryan. What's the Somali word for hot? Kulail. What's the Somali word for cold? Kavu. What's the Somali word for warm? Diran. What's the Somali word for cool? Kabu yer. What's the Somali word for weather? Emilo. What's the Somali word for climate? Emiledagud. What's the Somali word for rainbow? Kansarobat. What's the Somali word for shadow? Hos. What's the Somali word for afternoon? Galap. What's the Somali word for minute? Daqiqat. What's the Somali word for second? Ilbiriksi. What's the Somali word for hour? Sa'at. What's the Somali word for future? Mustaqbal. What's the Somali word for past? Wagi hore. What's the Somali word for present? Hadda. What's the Somali word for fast? Digdig. What's the Somali word for slow? Tertib. What's the Somali word for beach? Hip. What's the Somali word for desert? Sahare. What's the Somali word for forest? Keen. What's the Somali word for flower? Ubah. What's the Somali word for leaf? Alen.